Welcome to the White Spring Bunker. These halls were built to safeguard some of the most prestigious members of the United States government. We are Modus, and we are always looking for men and women capable of helping us restore what has been lost. In return, we offer this, a new enclave and our refuge from the world above. Please, take your time and look around. The Colonel has made great strides restoring this place to its former glory. Welcome, member, to our little enclave.
Greetings, members. As always, I am the Operative, your designated tour guide and host here at the White Spring. The ends justify the means. The Appalachian Wasteland is an unforgiving place, and the Colonel will do anything and everything to achieve her aims. And like a Russian doll, Valeria has plans within plans. As she works with the Overseer, however reluctantly, she also lays the groundwork for dealing with the Blood Eagles. New characters emerge, new pieces on the chessboard, and the stakes of the game have gotten higher.
Welcome back, Lilith. I've already heard your mission was a success.
Yeah, Val, that tape worked like a charm. Meg's a real softie. Can't believe they call themselves raiders.
They'll be easier to manipulate. We just heard from Top of the World that they cut a deal with Meg too. Offered her up some old trophy of David Thorpe's in return. That gives us direct access to Crater.
Goody.
Just play nice, Lilith. We're still recovering from the bog, and for the foreseeable future, we'll be working from the shadows. Which brings me to your next assignment.
Oh please, oh please, oh please.
I need you to disappear for a while. At least, I need Lilith to disappear. The Blood Eagles have become a threat we can't ignore, but we don't have the manpower to deal with them directly.
I like where this is going.
Take this.
Valeria handed Lilith a thick briefing folder.
Operation Werewolf.
I know you've been aching to get your hands dirty, and the Blood Eagles don't play by the rules. I need you to do what you do best. The only limitation is your imagination.
Lilith was practically drooling.
Inside, you have everything we've uncovered on the Blood Eagles. Encampments, known leaders, radio frequencies, and a line on someone who might be able to provide first-hand intelligence on their operations. You'll also find a list of potential assets. I want you to assemble your team. This will be a Sigma Omega operation, off the books. Once you leave the bunker, you'll be on your own.
Just like I like it.
Pick an alias and stick with it. None of this can be traced back to the White Spring, understood?
There won't be anyone left alive to talk, Val.
And here's the location of camps and safe houses you can use. I expect a weekly report. Use this frequency. It is encoded and will be monitored by Modus.
Lilith opened the folder and started leafing through the personnel documents.
Sounds really good, Val. Hey, I recognize this guy. Isn't he?
In the brig, yes. I'll take care of that. It's better that he's out in the field, too. Just get ready and be prepared to move out later today. I'll send this one to you when he's ready.
Okie dokie, Val. I can't wait.
Be careful, Lil. Have fun, but make sure you come back in one piece.
Lilith gave Valeria a wink, then skipped out of the office and down the hall.
Modus?
Yes, Colonel?
Pull up the latest incident report for Private Sullivan and inform the brig that I'm on my way down to see the prisoner. Good morning, Private. I'm here to see the prisoner.
Yes, ma'am.
Any problems with him?
None. He appears to be sleeping it off. This is his third stint in the past month. He's almost a regular. How's Lieutenant Mac?
In recovery. They had to reset his jaw, and he's got quite the concussion. But he should be just fine in a couple of weeks.
Gosh, all that over a joke?
Well, I guess it wasn't very funny.
Yes, ma'am.
Private, I wish to speak to the prisoner alone. Disconnect the surveillance feed, and I'll get you when I'm finished with him.
I understand, ma'am.
Sullivan, get your ass up!
Man, what time is it anyway?
Well past time for you to be up, soldier.
Why does it feel like I was hit by a freight train?
I imagine that's the result of needing to use an assaultron to pull you off of Lieutenant Mack. They aren't known for their delicate touch.
Yeah, now I'm beginning to remember. My old cell. You think you can have my things brought down? I expect I'll be here for a while.
What is wrong with you, Private? This is the third altercation just this month, not to mention your insubordinate behavior since you were recruited.
People just rub me the wrong way, Colonel.
If it wasn't for your stellar combat record, Corporal, you would have been dropped off at the closest Fisher site a long time ago. Jeffrey Sullivan, age 29, Vault 76. Recruited, March 13th, 2103, Welch, Ash Heap. 5 commendations for meritorious service, 3 commendations for valor, 2 Purple Hearts. 4 reprimands for insubordination, 2 demotions in rank, 8 reprimands for physical altercations. 21 days in the brig altogether. Private, there are few members with a record such as yours. In the field, you have one of the highest kill counts and mission success rate, and yet you also have one of the worst disciplinary records as well. Saying you don't get along with people is like saying water is wet.
Haha, now that's a funny joke.
What am I going to do with you, Private? You've put 3 members in the hospital. The folks in logistics have gotten tired of replacing your melee weapons, and I just heard you've been kicked out of the poker league because of cheating.
Ouch, that last one hurts.
On the other hand, you're a first-class infiltrator and deadly with blades, swords, and gauntlets.
You flatter me, Colonel.
We don't waste potential. But I can't have you disrupting our operations or the morale of my people. So, I'm going to give you a choice. You can either stew in here for the next few weeks, or you take an assignment that puts you in the field indefinitely.
That's not much of a choice.
Oh, it gets so much worse. I'm putting together a team of special individuals. As you are aware, a lot has changed over the past few months, and our tactics need to change to fit the new reality. If you decide to accept this assignment, your new CO will brief you on the details. If you decline, as stated, you'll be cooling your heels in here until I can figure out which Fisher site I can drop you in.
Wonderful.
Despite his flippancy, Sullivan thought for a full 10 seconds before responding, while Valeria watched him impassively.
Okay, Colonel. Anything would be better than just sitting here. Or worse, whatever else you might have planned.
Oh, don't be so sure about that. But I believe you're making the right decision.
Colonel, where are you going? Aren't you getting me out of here?
Don't worry, Corporal. You'll be getting out soon enough. Major Stein will be down to collect you shortly.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were 2 people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met, and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian Wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story. Available now.
Rising out of the mist, the Wayward Bar and Inn was already bustling with activity. Since opening, about a year after Vault 76 opened, the establishment had quickly become the central meeting space for just about every faction in Appalachia. It was a safe spot to grab food, drink, and a place to stay for the night, coordinate raids and scavenging runs, and hear all about the local news and gossip. Duchess, the proprietor of the Wayward, was a former resident of the region who got out before everything went to hell with the Scorch Plague. Of course, she pined for old Appalachia, and as soon as she heard people were returning to the region, she packed up her former establishment and moved it, brick by brick, back home. Questions about Duchess's former life were politely ignored or answered only with vague responses. Whatever she had done before the war, she had long since moved on. It was here that Bitter found himself, having traveled for more than a week from his encampment in the Savage Divide. A friend of a friend had shown up at the camp looking for him, with a message and some caps. He'd been intrigued, but also incredibly bored at the same time. After traveling to the area as part of the guard contingent for the Blue Ridge Caravan Company, he struck out on his own as a gun for hire. He developed quite the reputation for working with the raiders and settlers, and even the various scavenger groups in the area, as an excellent fighter, infiltrator, and he was known for his discretion. Slinging his prized lever-action rifle across his back, he walked up to the entrance to the Wayward. A loud electronic moo came from the Brahmin enclosure. Bitter had heard about the reprogrammed sentry bot, but he never really believed it until now. Painted up like a cow, the war machine rolled around its enclosure and mooed.
Yeah, and here I thought I'd seen everything.
Bitter walked past the bot in the Brahmin enclosure and then up to the front door, opening it. Almost immediately, Bitter was hit with the sounds of a raucous party, with music and the smells of fresh pepperoni rolls and Brahmin ribeye steaks.
Excuse me, but you'll need to surrender your weapons before entering.
Bitter turned to find the concierge was an assaultron. Not the first one he'd seen, but certainly the first one who didn't immediately try to kill him on sight.
Do I get him back?
Of course. We just prefer all of our customers leave the Wayward alive. What you do out there is obviously your business. I'm Polly. I help run the establishment and keep the peace around here. In fact, it's been a whole week since I was forced to vaporize a rowdy customer.
Well, I would hate to break your streak there, Polly. Here you go.
Bitter handed over his lever action, pistol, and combat knife.
Enjoy your stay at the Wayward.
Bitter tipped his hat before striding into the bar. It certainly was busy. The bar itself was packed with scavengers, just back from a run down to Poseidon Energy. The tables were segregated between folks from Foundation, a handful of raiders, eyeing each other with suspicion, even as they ate and drank themselves silly. Bitter didn't know exactly who he was supposed to meet. He was only given a phrase to give the barkeep, and she'd point him in the right direction. Elbowing himself up to the bar, he tried to get the attention of the lady behind the counter, but she was in deep conversation with a few of the other patrons.
Buddy, what can I get for you?
A well-dressed ghoul had sauntered up from behind the bar to help with the crowd. Bitter was used to dealing with ghouls. Soon after the war, a lot of people shot ghouls on sight, especially since most of them were feral and extremely dangerous. It wasn't until later that some non-feral ghouls started coming around. It was strange, dealing with folks that looked like monsters, but they were just ordinary folks just trying to survive.
Yeah, I'll take a rock gut bourbon and a meeting with Freya.
The ghoul, known as Mort, gave him a look up and down before leaning over and whispering something into Duchess's ear. She glanced over at Bitter and reached under the counter, pulling out a brown bottle and 2 glasses.
Why, that's an excellent choice, darling. There's a table in the back where you can drink in private.
Bitter swore Duchess winked at him as he took the bottle and glasses while threading his way through the crowd towards the back. The room, probably reserved for more special events, was quite dark, with a single hanging bulb illuminating a corner table and 2 chairs. The sole occupant was sitting in front of a plate of indescribable food and several empty bottles of various alcohol. Whoever the person was, they were wearing a wide-brimmed hat, making it impossible to identify him from a distance, and they were stuffing their mouths full of food of whatever was on the plate in front of them. After chewing thoroughly, lifting a bottle and guzzling half of its contents, the individual waved over to Bitter and pointed at the chair.
Well, not the strangest set of circumstances, I guess.
Bitter pulled out the old chair and took a seat. His host pushed a plate of food towards him, which he politely declined, after not being able to determine exactly what it was. He put the bottle of bourbon on the table and started to pour 2 glasses.
Pour yourself a shot, if you want. But give me the bottle.
Oh, she's a woman.
She wiped her mouth on her sleeve and looked up. She had reddish face paint and a malicious grin.
You must be bitter.
Well, not most of the time, but the name's stuck anyway.
Bitter. Yeah, I totally get it.
And you are...
Just call me Freya, for the time being. Didn't know if you'd accept the invitation.
What? And pass up the chance to dine in such a fine establishment.
I like your sense of humor. It pays not to take oneself too seriously.
The woman, calling herself Freya, took the bourbon and took a swig before setting it back down on the table.
Bet you're wondering why you're here.
Well, yeah. But I'm assuming it's some kind of job, and you need experienced hands.
Something like that. But not just any experienced hands. I'm looking for wastelanders who know how to get their hands dirty, don't require babysitting, and are utterly reliable.
Curiosity killed the cat and all that.
Killed, skinned, and ate the cat. And all that. You'd be well paid. A lot more than you'd earn as a caravan guard or a raider. And you'd have access to all kinds of fun toys. And upon successful completion of the mission, you'd keep whatever you wanted. Get a share of the other spoils, and, of course, would be walking about with your pockets stuffed with caps.
Oh, sounds interesting. And extremely dangerous. I didn't fall off the pick-em-up truck yesterday. I needed details before I do anything.
Freya scooped up another handful of food and stuffed her mouth, chewing loudly. After swallowing again, she spoke.
I was told you were direct. Glad to see they were right. All I can tell you right now is that we'll be spending a lot of time hunting eagles.
Raider business, huh? Bounties. Paid by the head kind of thing.
Freya didn't nod, didn't react in the least, just watched him with her predatory eyes.
Got nothing better to do, so why not? Assuming you're the boss.
Freya merely nodded.
I'm gonna need some payment up front.
Freya downed the rest of the bourbon before reaching under the table and pulling out a sack, placing it in the middle of the table. Bitter could hear the jangle of a lot of caps. He reached for it, and almost faster than he could follow, Freya slammed a wicked blade into the table next to his hand, freezing him in place.
That's a retainer. If you don't stay retained, I'll enjoy taking a pound or two of flesh that you owe me.
Bitter slowly reached and took the bag of caps, keeping his eye on her the whole time.
I always honor my commitments, and pay my own debts, too.
Freya just laughed, pulling the blade from the table and sliding it back into its sheath.
Oh, I just wanted to see if you would run screaming or piss your pants. Since you appear to have done neither, you might just be the right man for the job. Well, it's been grand. Here, take this map. Be there in 3 days. Bring whatever you think you'll need, but I'm not carrying you, so pack light. If you're not there, I'll find you anyway.
This time, the smile didn't reach her eyes, which instead seemed to somehow turn a deeper shade of black. Freya got up from the table, grabbing a small pack and whistling a little tune, walked out of the room, stopping in the doorway briefly to call back.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bitter took a deep breath and willed his hands to stop shaking. It was a nervous tic from years in the wasteland, but nothing that a little combat wouldn't sort out. He hefted the bag of caps, mentally weighing its value. It wasn't an insignificant sum, and definitely worth his time. The woman had been right. The Blue Ridge Caravan didn't pay nearly as much as they used to, now that they had more guards than they needed, and nothing else really caught his fancy. It was obvious that she was dangerous, but he sensed there was a whole lot more to this than she let on. He grabbed one of the half-empty bottles and downed the last of its contents, letting the alcohol slide down his throat. It burned, but it felt good, warming him up inside. He put the caps away and left the room. The ghoul bartender let him know that everything had been paid for, and there was even a room for him next door. As Bitter walked out of the bar, he never noticed the young man sitting in the corner. He'd been there since he arrived, sipping on a Blackwater brew, seemingly watching nothing in particular, but seeing everything. After Bitter left, the young man paid his tab, scribbled a handful of notes, and then stuffed them into his pocket, before collecting his weapons from Polly and leaving. He walked silently past the Brahmin pens before turning south, heading back to Sutton.
Hi, I'm Fire Writer, and I'm the host of The Pixel People, a podcast dedicated to taking a close look at our favorite characters from our favorite video games. From major characters who define the course of a game's storyline to smaller characters who you might have never noticed. Every week, we go beyond the quest line to examine a particular character's story arc and choices, and discover the real-world parallels and life lessons hidden just below the surface. I hope you'll join us. You can find the Pixel People on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts.
Vinny Costa poured himself another cup of coffee, with just a small shot of whiskey to go with it. He knew his boss Joanna frowned upon it, but he felt he deserved something a little extra after a particularly tough week of Blood Eagle attacks on his caravans heading through the Big Bend Tunnel. Since arriving in Appalachia, the Blue Ridge Caravan Company had developed a significant presence, supplying both the settlers and raiders with weapons, armor, sundries, and other goods. They also had a sweetheart contract with Duchess up at the Wayward to supply her with all the booze they could get their hands on. Vinny wasn't happy with all the terms of the deal, but Joanna had negotiated directly with the client. Seems they had some pre-war dealings back in the day, and some leftover favors were traded in to seal the deal. Looking over his operations, Vinny was still pretty happy with the way things were shaping up. It was always best to be first, and being the first caravan company in Appalachia, the opportunities were just pouring in. Of course, clearing the Big Bend Tunnel hadn't been easy. Full of those scorched things, he'd lost a few of his original guards finally securing it. But once they had, the goods just started flowing. He had a couple of businesses going on the side, but with Joanna keeping a close eye on operations, he kept things pretty quiet. Vinny suspected a couple of the merchants were getting it into their heads that he was selling their lost merchandise, but he was also prepared to cut them in on the deal, if push came to shove.
This is West Bend.
Go ahead.
Aries and Rudy are heading back. We got some soldiers here, too.
Soldiers? Friendly?
All business by the looks of it. Said they were looking for the boss. Should I send them through?
Sure, but tell them they gotta pull their own weight in the tunnel. Aries already has one job, and I'm not paying him for another one.
10-4, boss. I'll let them know.
Vinny set down the mic and looked back over to the tunnel entrance. Everything had been great for a while, but then the Blood Eagles had gotten all high and mighty about their territory. He even tried to bribe them, but most of them were so high on chems that they didn't care much about other than just hitting his guys and stealing the merchandise. How they managed to find ways in, he had no idea. They'd seal up a few tunnels, only to have him come right back through somewhere else. Lucky for him, the guards he did have always put on a good show, and most of their goods made it to destination. Now he had to prepare to deal with these newcomers, if they survived the trip.
Hell of a way to start the day.
It could have. Nah, it should have been very bad. Not only had the Blood Eagles hit the caravan, but this time they did it with easily 3 times the men of previous attempts. Vinny followed the reports from the checkpoints in the tunnel, and then they could easily hear the reverberations of automatic rifle fire and explosions from the entrance on this side. Miraculously, all 3 Brahmins survived, and so did his crew. Aries was a little worse for wear, having been a little too close to a plasma grenade detonation, but both he and Rudy credited their survival to their guests. Vinny caught sight of him coming out of the smoke, a group of 4 heavily armed soldiers led by what appeared to be a young woman in a military cap and mirrored sunglasses. Despite being all business, Vinny knew how difficult it would be to replace any of his men, so he jogged to the tunnel entrance to thank his mysterious benefactors.
Hey there. Thank you for saving my guys and the Brahmin.
The young woman slung her rifle over her shoulder and reached out to take the offered hand. Her handshake was confident and firm. She took off her sunglasses and put them in a side pouch, and when she looked back up at Vinny, he had to do a double take. There were a series of long scars down the side of her face, but it was her eye that immediately caught his attention. It was silver, with a striking black iris.
It was our pleasure, Mr. Costas. If you'd excuse me for a few minutes, I need to make sure my team is sorted, then we can talk.
Vinny quickly pulled himself back together. She was no ordinary merc, and this was no ordinary situation. He smelled opportunity. Watching her go to each of her men, she exuded confidence and leadership, and they all showed her obvious respect.
Mr. Costas, my team could use some water and chow.
Certainly. Kieran, Libby, help these guys out, will you?
The two other caravan guards swung into action, introducing themselves and taking the newcomers over to the chow line.
Much appreciated, Mr. Costas. I apologize, I should have introduced myself first. I'm Colonel Valeria Faustina, representing the new enclave here in Appalachia. We have a business proposition for you.
Enclave? Combined with the military rank, it sounded like a government thing. Since the bombs dropped, there hadn't been much government left, but in the old days, the company had a lot of sway with the govies, especially the military. Joanna had to grease plenty of pockets, but the profits were always worth it.
Well, Colonel, we owe you one for saving the caravan. Why don't you come to my office and we can discuss?
Vinny escorted the colonel over to the tent. It was a far cry from a traditional office, but certainly better than nothing. As hard as he tried to avoid staring, his gaze was drawn back to her silver eye. He thought he caught a little small smile on her face. Vinny, an experienced negotiator, immediately understood.
Damn, she played me. Knew I'd be fascinated with that eye of hers. This could be a really good opportunity.
Vinny just smiled, and the two got down to business. The braying of a new group of Brahmin caught the attention of the Blue Ridge ranch hands. They swung into action and ran to meet the latest trader making their way towards the tunnel. It was Eugenie, the well-known ghoul arms merchant. She was bringing in a fresh shipment of weapons and armor from her contacts down south.
Hey, Eugenie, good to see you. You just missed a boatload of excitement around here.
Excitement? Around here? Whoever would have guessed?
No, seriously. Aries and Rudy just got hit hard by those damn Blood Eagles, but they had this escort with them, looked like military or something, and they kicked those Blood Eagles' asses all the way back to Pennsylvania.
Huh. You don't say.
Eugenie was notoriously suspicious of anyone claiming to be part of the government. She'd seen enough of her ghoul friends hunted down and killed by people claiming to be in charge, whether they called themselves mayors, sheriffs, or whatever.
Yeah, the one in charge is over there talking to Vinny.
Eugenie looked over and thought the woman looked awfully young to be in charge of anything, much less having something of interest for Vinny. She did look pretty, though, reminding Eugenie a little of what she'd looked like herself before the bombs dropped and she became a ghoul.
Eugenie, good to see you. Got some chow here if you'd like some.
Why, I'm much obliged, Libby. Been a long trip. I'll take one of those plates.
Eugenie smiled. It was good to see Libby around. By far, she was her favorite caravan guard. Traveling through the tunnel was always so much smoother when Libby was around. And despite her rough exterior, they had a good rapport during the trips. She'd even got her to laugh from time to time.
So, heard there was some big ruckus earlier.
Shit-eating blood eagles again. Went at Aries and crew hard this time. Luckily, no one was hurt, but if that other crew hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened.
Other crew? They mercs or something?
Can't rightly say. Could be. You don't have parents like mine and not spot military trading a mile away. They haven't said much, been keeping to themselves. But what brings you around, Eugenie?
Oh, you know. More premium arms and ammunition for the crater. Meg put out the word that she's stockpiling for something. Even asked for some heavy-duty explosives, too. Willing to pay top caps for speedy delivery.
I just came on for my shift. Looks like we'll be able to get you through the tunnel no problem now. After that last run, I bet the Blood Eagles will be licking their wounds for a while.
They both laughed and chatted while finishing up their food. Eugenie liked the company of those who didn't judge her just on her appearance. Being a ghoul was bad enough, but having to deal with all the prejudice and, well, of course, all the people trying to kill him was the worst part. But the Blue Ridge Caravan Company was all business. As long as the caps were good, they didn't care one way or the other. And in Appalachia, she even heard about some super mutant going around as a trader, too. Looking back over, it seemed as though Vinny was wrapping up his discussions with the newcomer. After getting up from his chair, Vinny caught sight of Eugenie and called out.
Eugenie, come on over. I'd like to introduce you to someone.
Thanks again, Libby. See you soon.
Eugenie put her plate on the ground and walked over to Vinny. As she approached, she got a better look at the woman. She was about her own height, with an almost bluish raven-colored hair underneath a military cap. There was a long scar down the right side of her face, and that silver eye, but both were focused on her. Eugenie saw none of the disgust or alarm she would have expected from your average smooth skin. Instead, the woman looked her over before extending her hand.
Vinny has told me quite a bit about you, Eugenie. I'm Colonel Valeria Faustina. Nice to meet you.
A pleasure to meet you, Colonel Faustina.
Valeria, for some reason, looked a bit uncomfortable at that form of address, and gave her a small smile.
Colonel Valeria is fine. Or just Colonel.
I was just telling the Colonel about how you're one of our best merchants, Eugenie, and that you might be interested in a little, business proposition.
Always up for good business, Vinny.
We're looking for reliable merchants to help us move some vital medical products. I know that arms and ammunition are your thing, but Vinny said you do regular business up at Crater, and we need to make sure they get our deliveries. And we'll pay a premium as well.
Medical, huh? Sounds interesting. And expensive. You know the Blue Ridge only guards part of the way. I have to pay out of pocket for the rest of the way, right?
That's correct, but in this case, we'll be providing escorts as soon as you hit the other side of the tunnel. You won't need to worry about that. They'll take you all the way up to Crater and back as many times as required until the contract is finished.
Well, that's a pretty fair deal as long as the caps are right. But, you know, not everyone is quite as accommodating as you. Will your folks have problems with guarding a ghoul?
Absolutely not. They'll follow orders. My orders. Sorry, I know you're just being cautious, but you have nothing to worry about. In fact, I'll do you one better and escort you personally on the first trip.
Eugenie liked the thought of that. Caravan guards were good and all, but having an actual trained and disciplined escort all the way to Crater and back, and better yet, not having to pay for it? It also didn't hurt that this colonel was easy on the eyes, too.
Well, let's talk caps then. And I'll need to complete my delivery up to Crater, too. Meg doesn't like being kept waiting.
It's just about time to get you through the tunnel, Eugenie. Besides these folks, I'm still sending Libby with you as well. Here's the basics of what the offer looks like, minus the fee to the BRCC, of course.
He handed Eugenie a piece of paper covered in notes. Looking it over, she couldn't find anything amiss. She already had an account with the Blue Ridge Caravan Company, and Valeria would pay them directly, with half in advance and the final payment due upon delivery of the final shipment. The dates looked manageable, and once she figured the cost and not having to pay the mercs for guard duty, she'd clear a tidy profit. It would really help the other ghouls back at the compound as well. She folded up the paper and put it into one of her pouches.
That's as good a contract as I've seen in a while. As long as Vinny here confirms delivery of the caps, you'll have my services on call.
Eugenie extended her hand, and she and Valeria shook on the deal.
Libby, time to get a move on.
Valeria whistled to her team, and they all grabbed their gear. Everyone headed towards the tunnel entrance as the ranch hands brought the fully loaded Brahmin over to the group. The smell of cordite and gunpowder was still thick at the entranceway, but everyone had long gotten used to that odor in the wasteland. Libby moved quickly to the front of the caravan.
Okay, people. Despite what happened earlier, we're not going to treat this as a cakewalk. For the newcomers here, thank you again for your assistance earlier. We'd appreciate the same level of support as we head back to the other end of the tunnel.
Valeria's team nodded or gave a quick salute.
Today we'll be carrying a shipment of premium arms and ammunition. It would be great if we can get to the other side with everything, including all of our appendages, intact. So, please protect the Brahmin.
Alright, let's go, people. Slow and steady, and make sure you watch the side tunnels.
Libby turned and led them all into the Big Bend tunnel. Valeria split her team in half, with 2 operatives up front with Libby, and the other 2 following from behind. Valeria walked side by side with Eugenie amongst the Brahmin.
So, exactly how many times have you been through this tunnel, Colonel Colonel?
Too many. Actually, the last time I came through here was before the Blue Ridge folks cleared it out. Looks a lot different now, though it smells about the same.
You're interesting. Where are you from, exactly?
Vault 76.
Oh, a vault dweller. I should have guessed. You're a little cleaner than most. Frankly, I'm also surprised how open-minded you are. I've run into a few vault dwellers who didn't take too kindly to my particular skin condition.
You're an American and a survivor. That's all that matters to me. If we're going to rebuild the country, we're going to need every hand we can get.
You are definitely not what I expected.
Happy to have exceeded your expectations. How long have you been trading?
I've been doing this traveling merchant thing for a while now. I spent damn near a decade stuck in our compound, hiding from people that would kill us on sight just for being who we are. I found that rolling into town with supplies and caps to trade eases up the tension. It's people talking to you again. The fact that I'm strapped to the teeth in firepower doesn't hurt neither. With some people, like Blood Eagles, there's no discussion to be had.
Had my own run-ins with them. We plan on doing something about them, too. Can't have them running around Appalachia completely unchecked like they are now.
As the Colonel and Eugenie bantered back and forth, the caravan slowly made its way through the tunnel. Past the first checkpoint, they started running into evidence of the firefights in the previous run. Corpses of several Blood Eagles and their dogs were still strewn about where they fell. The Colonel had her men do a quick search of the bodies, just in case they could find anything of interest. Libby was pausing to check the various side tunnels, but so far everything looked clear. Up ahead, they neared the second checkpoint. It was about midway through the tunnel, and had been the scene of a particularly vicious fight before. Several small fires still burned, and blood had pooled in several areas, too. Libby held up her hand.
Hold up. Colonel, how many Blood Eagles did you say were killed here?
14.
Valeria looked around the area and began to notice what Libby was getting at. There was a lot of blood and only a few bodies, and definitely not all the ones they'd seen before.
Shit. Okay, people, get ready for a fight.
Valeria's men all dropped into their ready stances, rifles out, while Libby and Eugenie both scanned the tunnels for any movement. The Colonel unslung her combat rifle and looked back down where they came, seeing something moving in the dark.
Movement behind!
The area erupted in gunfire as Blood Eagle suddenly charged from several side tunnels and hopped down from the overhead catwalks. Obviously, they hadn't taken kindly to the thrashing they'd received before and were looking for payback. Libby's shotgun rang out as she fired into a group of attack dogs, making a run at the lead Brahmin. The Colonel's men killed the rest before turning to the Blood Eagles, trying to get angles on him. Eugenie was using her .44 to take out another raider, charging up from behind with a power fist. As Valeria lay covering fire beside her, she had to admit that the ghoul was not only a good shot, but utterly fearless when standing in the face of danger. Dropping to one knee, the Colonel let loose a sustained burst that cut down 3 of the Eagles, splashing their blood up against the tunnel walls. Within a few minutes, the firing died down, and Valeria whistled for her men to secure the area. Libby was checking on the Brahmin. Despite taking several hits, the animals were tough and seemed to just shake off the wounds, and seemed anxious to continue their way.
Colonel, we found a couple of fresh tunnels. Looks like where they got in.
Close them, Lieutenant. Just don't bring down the whole tunnel on us.
Yes, ma'am.
Jones saluted and jogged back down the tunnel.
That was practically an army. We must have gotten them all, right?
I've never credited the Blood Eagles with an overabundance of brains, but cannon fodder they have plenty of. Whenever their numbers dip, recruiting probably gets easier because the spoils are split fewer ways. I have a feeling that they'll be back eventually.
Valeria started checking the bodies of the newly dead. She was somewhat surprised at how well armed they were. Many were carrying plasma and laser rifles, which was concerning. Those were all military-grade weapons. She walked over to the final corpse, a young woman laying on her stomach. Valeria reached down and turned her over, only to see a prime fragmentation grenade roll free. From her better angle off to the side, Eugenie must have seen it even before Valeria, because she immediately took 2 running steps in her direction before leaping across and tackling Valeria out of the way, and they were both buffeted by the explosion of the grenade behind them. Valeria shook her head to get the ringing out of her ears and opened her eyes to see Eugenie on top of her, looking down with a serious look of concern.
Valeria, Colonel, are you all right?
Yeah. Not the first time someone's tried to blow me up, but thank you.
Valeria could see a look of genuine concern in Eugenie's eyes, and she felt a little flutter in her heart as well. Without thinking, she gave in to a sudden impulse.
You can just call me Valeria.
Eugenie stood up and reached down to help the Colonel to her feet, perhaps holding her hand a little longer than necessary, and gave her a small smile, nodding.
It would have been a shame to have our contract end so soon. Those Blood Eagles. Fucking crazy.
They all spent the next few minutes double-checking for any more traps or live explosives, while Valeria's team closed off the new infiltration tunnels with rigged charges. Libby, Eugenie, and Valeria met together quickly.
I can't guarantee we won't run into more of these idiots before we get to the other end, How's everyone on ammo?
We're fine here.
Fine here, too. I can always grab one of the guns from off the Brahmin, but I'd like to avoid using the merchandise, if we can.
Alright then, we keep moving, slow and steady.
The rest of the trip through the tunnel was uneventful, outside of running into a few more stray mongrels. Libby and the operatives were able to deal with them easily, and a few more side entrances were closed as a result. Valeria made a note to have a team sweep the exterior of the tunnels, especially up in the hills, to see if they could find where the Blood Eagles were starting from and how they were gaining access. Coming out of the other end of the tunnel, the caravan was met by the ranch hands who took the Brahmin for water and forage. Libby went over to the small commissary and came back with an armful of Blackwater brews for everyone. They toasted a successful run, while both Valeria and Eugenie toasted again on a successful partnership.
Eugenie? I've sent word ahead to some associates of mine. They'll meet us just to the east of the White Spring. I'll escort you there, and they'll take over for the rest of the trip to the crater and back. I need to get the shipments ready, and I'll send word when we're on our way.
Sounds like a mighty fine plan to me. Anyway, you might need me around as a lucky charm or something.
Valeria laughed, but might have also blushed just a little. Eugenie laughed as well and clinked her beer against Valeria's. It helped to have good company on the road, and it didn't hurt that she liked being around Valeria too. The two of them drank their beer and talked, waiting for the caravan to be ready for the next trip north. Thank you again, members, for joining us here on The Modus Files. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe, and better yet, please leave a review to help others find our little enclave. You can also follow us on Twitter, @ModusFiles, for more information about our podcast, Fallout 76 content, and random musings on the Enclave. I'd also like to thank our cast, Pandora Beatrix as Colonel Valeria Faustina, Lucy Middleton as Major Lilith Alistair and Freya, General Sniper as Private Lewis, Tim Young as Private Sullivan, Mark Hosworth as Bitter, Rhea Cheshire as Polly the Assaultron, Pino Pineapple as Mort, Kirsty Harrison as Duchess, Connor Bushhoven as Vinny, Monty Wildhorn as the Blue Ridge Caravan Guard, Fire Rider as Eugenie, Casual in a Corset as Libby, Rob Cunningham as the Blue Ridge Caravan Ranch Hand, Austin Rogers as Lieutenant Jones, and Brad Williams as the voice of Modus. And a shout out to the Apocalyptic Aristocracy Discord, home to a great group of fellow creators, the Robots Radio podcast community and the rest of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, and Jeremiah Johnson, our favorite character artist, who provided the wonderful character artwork you can find on our website. Lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. God bless the Enclave, and God bless America.
Members, we look forward to your next visit to our little enclave.